There's a lot of stuff that's going on that we can be asking questions about. First time ever, we've got a Postmaster General who has a clear political connection and agenda with the person who picked him. During the Senate hearings in the spring of 2019, Congressman Collins was talking about how the unions have been really helpful in working with the U.S. Postal Service during their difficult financial issues. And one of the things that people don't understand is every time that something happens in the United States Postal Service, a postal worker loses money, it seems. If we automate the handling of magazines instead of having them in bundles so carriers have to sort them in their cases, if we automate that, the money that's saved through the efficiencies include taking money away from the carrier because they don't have to do so much work anymore. Now, the other thing is in the letter carriers out here in the rural world is they get paid on what's called an evaluated route, basically once or twice, once every other year or so. They come out and they take a stopwatch and they watch a guy work. They watch him work in his case, they watch him work, they watch him walk back and forth from the hampers he's got to work with, they watch him load his truck, they follow him around the route. They find out everything that's involved in doing his route, and they do it over every day for over 2 weeks, and then they come up with what they believe the route is worth as a daily wage. So here's the thing about Amazon that's important to understand. Their driver comes here and leaves it on my dock. No, he doesn't. He brings it in and he carries it inside the doors here. Carries it inside the doors and leaves it exactly where I ask him to, and I take it and I sort it at a rate of at least 250 pieces an hour. That's the minimum rate. Nobody works that slow, but that is the standard. And if I take all of my wages for the hour or any type of benefit that I would spread over the time that I'm working, literally it costs less than 15 cents for every package that I take from Amazon and sort to a carrier. So what you understand so far is if I sort 100 packages to a carrier, or one package, or no package, or 2,000 packages, the letter carrier has to deliver them, and he's not going to make any more or any less based on what he's carried to the street. So what we've figured out so far is when Amazon comes here and drops their stuff at my dock and they carry it inside and I sort it at the speed that I need to, and the letter carriers deliver it with the contract that they have that says they're not going to make any more or less, the only thing that's added as an expense other than that 15 cents is the couple extra minutes that the truck might idle while it's out on the route, delivering, knocking on doors, doing packages that have to be delivered at the door. But that doesn't happen all that often. Carrier's already going to the place. We're not adding a whole lot of costs. He's got those packages in the same place, going in the same mailbox with the mail that's already going there. So what we have here is we got a truck pulling up here for a third-party carrier that wants us to finish the last mile of them because it would cost them $1 to $5 more if they went out in the neighborhood and tried to do it themselves. Probably cost them even more. But the impression that we get from what's being said is the Postal Service is virtually paying them $1 to $5 for the privilege of delivering the package. That's not true. And the truth is, if that contract that we have with Amazon charges more than 15 cents, and I'm sure it does, we're making a lot of money here. Or some money here. It's not a loss. So, follow me. The president isn't going to sign any COVID-19 aid for the United States Postal Service because the United States Postal Service is a joke because they don't charge Amazon enough money for the packages they deliver. But the cost of us to deliver those packages here in rural America, which is where you see very few Amazon trucks. You see them everywhere on earth, but you don't see them here because it would cost them too much to deliver here. Now let's go take a look at the law. And let's find out why the Postal Regulatory Commission disagrees with the person who says we need to be charging more than we are for these last mile customers.
The law of the land.
The Postal Regulatory Commissioners are directed by the 2006 Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act to set pricing with consideration to the degree of preparation of mail for delivery into the postal system, performed by the mailer, and its effect upon reducing costs to the Postal Service.
Your law says pricing must consider the requirement that each class of mail or type of mail service bear the direct and indirect postal costs attributable to each class or type of mail service through reliably identified causal relationships, plus that portion of all other costs of the Postal Service reasonably assignable to such class or type.
The 2006 Postal Act expects the Postal Regulatory Commissioners to consider the effect of rate increases upon the general public, business mail users, and enterprises in the private sector of the economy engaged in the delivery of mail matter other than letters.
If they do raise the prices on these last mile customers, let's ask who's going to pay for it. When you buy something and you pay for delivery, when you buy something and it's mailed to you or sent to you or delivered to you by some carrier, who pays for the delivery? Oh, free delivery. No, there's no such thing. You're paying for it somewhere. So if we pass on $1 to $5 extra for every package that we deliver from the United States Postal Service here in rural America, where it literally costs us 15 cents, who's going to pay for it? Somebody's not taking care of you.
The blue line represents the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers. The pricing of monopoly products of the United States Postal Service, like first-class stamps, cannot be increased in any year, an amount greater than the preceding 12-month average of the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers. The orange line trends the forever first-class stamp price. A U.S. Circuit Court judge deemed the current pricing illegal. You can see why. The gray line trends the loss of first-class letter mail. Each percentage drop represents over $500 million in loss of revenue. The restriction must change.
The way we fix the Postal Service's financial problems, short-term and long-term, is we do two things. One, we get rid of for the market-dominant products, which is a euphemism for monopoly products, ones where there are no competitions, ones where you have no excuse for losing money. With the market-dominant products, we eliminate the restriction on price increases that is tied to the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers, which worked fine when there was no erosion of first-class mail. But their first-class mail has eroded over the last decade 34%, while the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers has increased little under 17%, like 16.8. The law also says that we're supposed to be able, every category of mail is supposed to pay for itself, and the law is written so that that category can't. And that's why we're losing money. To be honest with you, when stamps were 25 cents, between the time they were 25 cents and 50 cents, if we trended the average household income as the limit for how we could increase prices so that it wouldn't change the value the Postal Service meant then and now, if we trended that, we would generate another $8 billion a year simply. If we trended the average mail letter cost of our top 5 European trading partners, we would add $26.9 billion annually. So If Congress wants to do the right thing and fix the Postal Service, they will eliminate, modify, change the restriction on what we can charge first-class mail so that it can at least approach what the threshold for pricing is in the global market, so that it can approach the kind of pricing that's experienced everywhere else in the world. And that's how simple this problem is. We're not going to raise the price on last mile customers. That can't happen. And if it does, it will be to the detriment of the Postal Service and to the consumers of America, because they're going to be the ones to pay for it.
Following up on a phone conversation on July 23 and voice message. 3 points of fact. 1. What POTUS has to say about the USPS losses delivering parcels for Amazon, $1 to $5 per package, is patently false. I execute the USPS obligation for our last-mile customers and will attest that the cost to USPS in rural post offices where this occurs most does not exceed 15 cents per package. The video I produced explains. It illustrates a letter sent to all 100 senators who have been told by POTUS that any bill arriving on his desk with aid for USPS will be vetoed. Anyone knowing what actually happens in these relationships and acts against the will of Americans for the reasons POTUS explains should be exposed and condemned. 2. POTUS views that USPS is losing this money because there is a threshold that exists for price increases between what USPS collects from these deliveries and the cost these delivery companies would bear themselves if USPS did not exist as infrastructure to encourage their profitable commerce. He sees this opportunity unclaimed and calls us a joke. However, his appointee-laden PRC understands there are abstract values promised to Americans through the pricing laws that guide their citizen-owned infrastructure. Your law even discusses this in context of these last-mile customers. It expects that PRC consider, 5, the degree of preparation of mail for delivery into the postal system performed by the mailer and its effect upon reducing costs to the Postal Service, and 3, the effect of rate increases upon the general public, business mail users, and enterprises in the private sector of the economy engaged in the delivery of mail matter other than letters. These are abstract principles regarding the common good of America that seem beyond POTUS' ability to process ideas. Raising prices simply increases prices to consumers and erodes the values offered by American businesses, crippling their competitiveness in a modern world with competitors beyond our borders. 3. There is one point included in the 2006 Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act that makes it impossible for the Act to have complete compliance by the Postal Regulatory Commission. In the last decade, USPS has seen a loss of 30 billion pieces of letter mail. Such a decrease in volume and revenue, $15 billion plus, assures a monopoly category of products, with no competitor, that is bound by a requirement to keep price increases restricted by the consumer price increase for urban consumers will lose money. Losing money by that pricing rule violates the Act's other requirement that each category of product cover its costs. Your law says pricing must consider the requirement that each class of mail or type of mail service bear the direct and indirect postal costs attributable to each class or type of mail service through reliably identified causal relationships plus that portion of all other costs of the Postal Service reasonably assignable to such class or type. The 2006 Act said Congress should review and make adjustments after 10 years, 2016, which for the Act to be able to expect complete compliance, must be modified now. Possible actions. 1. As this is an election year, 1/3 of your fellow senators will face the judgment of voters this November. Swing state members of POTUS party might embrace the idea of sending a bill including $25 billion in emergency aid to USPS to the White House for veto. In polls, 92% of POTUS party's voters expect Congress to act to their wishes to save the USPS. Those swing state voters may realize the fraying threads of the self-medicating president's coattails as he introduces new medical experts to his globally embarrassing COVID-19 denial. I couldn't sleep last night, worried about the spouse sex demons under my bed. Others in that party may seek some separation from their despot themselves, and with 92% of their voters favoring a $25 billion rescue for USPS, this is a safe move. The message to all of them: make POTUS veto. Remember who you represent. 2. Use the invitation within the 2006 bill to modify language that eliminates the CPICU restriction and adopt a new standard based on market factors. A 98-cent first-class stamp for consumer mail, matching the average of our top 5 European trading partners, and a 62-cent business first class, trending household income since stamps cost 25 cents, would as much as $20 billion in annual revenue without undue hardship on anyone. It would make the bill that isn't working for anyone today, almost perfect. Senator Carper, feel free to ask why and how I know what needs doing. Visit tamalm.com for more info.
While I listen to, while I try to understand where the new Postmaster General is coming from, there's a big caution that comes over me as I see that the schedule of the trucks is more important than the promise of the delivery of the mail. This is a significant change. This is a move toward privatization of the Postal Service. We're supposed to try to show that we can operate more financially effectively, but the product that we're going to deliver now is a different product, and we need to understand that. When the weather is bad and you have medication that you need to have arrive via priority mail from another town, it was the responsibility of those managing the distribution of mail to make sure that a late plane that had to circle twice before it could land safely in Philadelphia was given the opportunity to land safely and get its cargo off the plane and to this dispatch that needs to come out, whether 30 minutes late, to a delivery to a post office where that time could easily be made up because there's always something to be done in the gap that time would have taken. And what we're talking about here is fulfilling the promise of the brand to a consumer, instead of saying, well, plane was late, not my fault. No, we know planes come late. We know weather happens. We know mistakes happen. We know that equipment breaks down. We know that there are things that'll happen in the course of operating the mail that require us to stop, step back, fix, and then proceed as standard operating procedure. And the standard operating procedure up until now has been to get the mail, be unrelenting in its delivery to the consumer. And that is the spirit that has driven the members of the American Postal Workers Union from the time I first started meeting members of the American Postal Workers Union. It's the spirit that drives those people who belong to the letter carrier unions and the city carrier unions who I've met. They don't want to let their customers down. They don't want to hear the earful in a community that might be hostile to the post office because of the hostile attitude of the person who has never been taught how to lead, who leads it from a place of fear and has another sociopathic knucklehead leaning on top of them, expecting something unrealistic. Now, all of that's part of the problem, and we can deal with one by one by taking the pieces apart and understanding them better. But right now, we do not want to compromise the promise we make to our consumers. And if you believe in that, tell your postmaster, tell your senator to vote against the wishes of the president. Tell your senator to vote for aid that will help the Postal Service survive the COVID-19 pandemic, get them the emergency aid they need so that it can survive, step back, and then start addressing the problems realistically by making the fixes in Congress that have to happen for us to get the job done for the consumers and to keep the organization operating as effectively as it does for them. Because they own it, and it's what they expect as owners.